Hi angels and welcome to my channel. In today's video I want to show you a couple of new products I just got. I got two of the new Guerlain products that just came out. I got the primer, the Parure Gold Skin Double Wear Correction and Protection and Primer SPF 50, as well as the new powder, the Parure Gold Skin Diamond Micro Powder. I'm going to show you these two products. I already tried them once, so this is the second time I'm using them with you guys. Now I am showing you the Westman Atelier concealer as well. I got the shade M1, and I want to show you the new Gucci highlighters. I got the shade Warm Gold 03. So if you want to see how these products are working for me and what are my thoughts about them, then please keep watching. Now let's start with the primer, and the primer is called Parure Gold Skin Double Wear Correction and Protection SPF 50, and you get just 1.3 ounces or 40 ml for $95 or 90 euros. And I think usually you get more product in your SPFs and primers. Usually you get 50 ml. So I was quite surprised when I saw that you get just 1.3 ounces, but let's see if the product is good, then I'm fine with it. But let's see what Guerlain is saying about the primer. Now on the Guerlain website they are saying that this primer makes the makeup last longer, that it has a light formula, and it instantly blurs the complexion and provides sheer radiance. It is infused with 24 karat gold, and it visibly reduces pores and corrects color imperfections. And this primer is a universal primer, so I think it's supposed to work for all skin types, and it has SPF 50 in it, and I like that it has SPF in it. I like when my products have additional SPF, but I wouldn't wear this primer as my sunscreen. I always recommend to use a separate sunscreen, and do not use this primer if you plan to get pictures, because you can get flashback. So let's start and see how this primer works. Now I already tried this primer once, and but with two different foundations. I tried it with the Luminous Silk foundation from Armani and the Terracotta foundation from Guerlain, and I can tell you it was horrible. My skin looked so dry. Now I think I'm going to use a different foundation today and a different sunscreen, because I think the primer didn't work well with the sunscreen I used as well. I used the Eucerin sunscreen from the anti-pigmentation line, because I'm testing the line at the moment. After my pregnancy I got a couple of dark spots on my cheeks, and I tried to get rid of them, but this primer doesn't work with this sunscreen at all. So I'm going to use a different sunscreen today, and the sunscreen I'm going to use is this one by Beauty of Josen, I think it's called. And I love this sunscreen. This is my go-to sunscreen actually before I got the Eucerin one. So we are going to test the primer with this sunscreen and with the Beige foundation from Chanel, because this foundation is more of an hydrating one, and I think this primer needs more of an hydrating foundation, especially on my dry skin. Now this primer is very, very thick, and it has a little bit of color in it. Now let me see. And the first time I used this primer I didn't like it at all actually, because it was so drying, and I don't like drying products on my skin. Now if you have more of a combination oily skin, I think you're gonna love this product, because it's quite mattifying after it sets. But if you have, like myself, more of an dry skin, then I think this is too drying for you. Now I see immediately that this primer works much better with this other sunscreen, because with the sunscreen from the Eucerin line, it was very, very thick on the skin, and this time it blends much easier into the skin. So you definitely need a more maybe hydrating sunscreen. The Eucerin sunscreen is not hydrating, is not mattifying. It's, I don't know, a natural finish I think, but this foundation needs much more of an hydrating sunscreen underneath. So this is how it looks, and it does color correct a little bit, but I think it gives the tiniest bit of a white cast as well, especially on my skin. I'm more of a light medium complexion. Maybe if you are lighter than me, then it's not going to look this white on you, but on me my skin looks quite ghostly, I think. This is how the primer looks, and I think today it looks much better. It's not that thick on the skin, but it feels It feels heavy actually. On the Guerlain website it says it's a light texture, but I think it feels a little bit heavy on the skin. I don't like the feeling of this primer. But with this sunscreen it's much better. I do like this primer with this sunscreen much better, because the first time I was so shocked. Now I am going to use the Beige foundation. I'm in the shade BO33, and I think I have the primer on for maybe a minute on, so I think we can start with the foundation. And I'm going to use maybe one pump. And I'm excited to see if this primer works with this foundation. Let me spread it. I love this Chanel foundation. And if a primer isn't working with this foundation, I know this primer isn't working for me at all, because this foundation works all the time for me. It doesn't matter what primer I use. This foundation always looks beautiful. So if my skin looks crazy, then it's a primer, not the foundation. Yeah, this foundation works much better with the primer. Doesn't look, my skin doesn't look so dry, because the other two foundations, it was so bad. Even my husband said that my skin looks bad and dry. Now I really don't know if I like the way this foundation looks with this primer, because usually this foundation is a no-brainer for me. This foundation always looks beautiful, and today with this primer it looks a little bit heavy on my skin, and it doesn't, you see my pores more. Like usually this foundation isn't blurring, but it doesn't accentuate pores as well. And I feel like with this primer, my skin, you see the pores, and the foundation looks a little bit heavy on the skin. I don't like that. So this is how it looks. Tell me, what do you think? Because I'm not impressed actually. You have to be, it seems like it works for drier skin if you have a very hydrating foundation and a very hydrating sunscreen, but otherwise it's not going to work for us girls with more dry skin. I think if you have more of a combination oily skin, you can use any sunscreen you want to, and this foundation, this primer is going to make sure that your skin stays matte. But for all of you with more dry skin, I'm not sure if you are going to like this. And for $95 and just 1.3 ounces, I expected more from this primer. But I'm happy that it works this time much better than the last time, because the last time I used it, I was like, never ever I'm going to use this product again. But I'm going to test this primer maybe with some other foundations as well, but it seems like it's a very, very picky primer. Now let's use the concealer, and the Westman Atelier concealer I got in the shade M1. This is supposed to be a light medium neutral shade, but this is quite yellow actually. Now I'm thinking about getting the shade M2 as well, because M2 is supposed to be more of a peach shade, and I think the combination of the both colors are going to be perfect for me. Now you are getting, because I already can tell you I like this concealer, this is why I'm thinking about getting another shade. Now you get 6 ml or 0.2 ounces, and this is, I think, a normal amount of product you get, because the concealer from NARS, the Radiant Creamy Concealer, you get 6 ml as well, and 0.22 ounces, and the House Labs concealer. This one is actually quite similar to the Westman Atelier concealer. You get 7 ml, 0.24 ounces. And these two are quite similar. I really love the House Labs concealer. I use it, I think mostly I'm using this concealer. Now, this one is supposed to have skincare in it as well. So I'm thinking about replacing my House Labs with this one. I'm not going to get rid of my House Labs one, but I think I'm going to use this one more than my House Labs one. That's what I want to say. So let's try the concealer on. I used it maybe 2 or 3 times, and it always looked so beautiful. And this concealer is quite thick, but still, if I just used the concealer without any foundation, and it still looked natural on the skin. It looked so beautiful. I'm very impressed with this concealer. And you need the tiniest bit of it because it's very, very pigmented and it spreads beautifully. So I'm going to use this amount. And do you see it's quite yellow? Now, do you see how beautifully it spreads? And the amount of pigmentation you get right away is quite impressive, I think. I was so happy that I liked the concealer because I didn't like the primer so much. Now, I don't think it's a bad primer, but I think it's not for my skin type. But the concealer, I was in love right away. Do you see how much coverage you get right away? It's so beautiful, and it doesn't crease. So if you want to build up the coverage, you can use more, or you let the concealer sit on the skin and then blend it. You get more coverage this way as well. This is how it looks. Now this is how the concealer looks. Isn't it pretty? I think it's quite impressive because you use such a little amount of product and you get this amount of coverage. I think it's so beautiful, and it feels very, very light on the skin. And even if you're not using any foundation, you can use this concealer. It's going to look very natural and pretty. Now this concealer sets by itself. You can set it if you want to. Maybe if you have more of an oily skin, you should set it. But it's a self-setting concealer, and I didn't set it the last times I used it. Oh, no. I set it once with the Guerlain powder, with this one, because I like this powder a lot. It's very brightening, but I didn't use a setting powder to set it, and with and without powder it looked beautiful the whole day. Now I want to use the powder with you guys, and this is the packaging, and I think it's so beautiful. I love the packaging of this powder. It's called Parure Gold Skin Diamond Micro Powder, and the packaging is so big. Do you see how big this is? It's crazy. It's so big because you actually get quite a bit of product. You get 1.2 ounce of products, or 35 grams. I got the shade 02 Clear Light. I was so surprised when I saw how much product you get, because you get less product in the primer, but this much product in the powder. I was very surprised. But let me read to you what on the Guerlain website they are saying about this powder. This is a finishing touch to the Parure Gold line. Now, this powder is very soft and has a light texture. It is infused with 24 karat gold, just like the primer. It sets the makeup. It's supposed to blur and brighten the complexion, and it is supposed to be very, very sheer in finish. So I already used this powder as well, and because my skin looked so dry because of the primer, I didn't like the powder as well. But I hope that this time I'm going to like the powder more, especially because you get so much product. Now, I'm not the biggest powder person because I have more of a dry skin, but sometimes I like to put a little bit of powder before I'm using bronzer and powdery bronzers and blushes. But I really wanted to try out the powder from Guerlain because I love Guerlain as a brand. I think they do so beautiful products. For this powder, I'm going to use the Hourglass brush. And the first thing I noticed with this powder is the scent. It's so beautiful. It has the same scent as this medium-rise powders, the new scent, not the old one. And I love both. I love the old scent and the new scent, but this powder smells so beautiful. It's so pretty. The smell is perfect. Now let me see how it looks. And do you see? It mattifies right away. So I think you girls with oily skin are going to love this one. And this powder actually is blurring, not like the primer. I think the primer even accentuates pores, but this powder is blurring actually, and it looks so beautiful on the skin. Do you see how pretty this looks? But my whole skin looks matte now, and I don't like that. I like more of a glowy finish on my skin, and that's the reason why I think you girls with more oily or combination skin are going to love this powder, because I like more of a radiance, and I think this powder is very good at controlling oil, because my skin doesn't produce a lot of oil, and because of that, after hours and hours, my skin still looked quite matte, and that's not what I prefer, but I think you girls with oily skin are going to love this one. especially because of the beautiful scent. I really, really wanted to like this powder. And you see how matte my skin looks? It's just very matte. But still, it's pretty. It's very, like my pores are very, very reduced. My texture looks beautiful, I think. It reminds me a little bit of the Givenchy powder, actually. On this one, the Prism Libre powder from Givenchy, because this one is very blurring as well. But I think this one is thinner and it smells better, because the scent of this powder is so beautiful. Just because of the scent, I would love to wear this one more, but I'm not sure if I'm going to, because I like more of an hydrating look on my skin, and I don't produce a lot of oils, so there's no oil that comes through the powder to give me more of a maybe natural finish. But if you like this perfected skin, this poreless perfected skin, then this is the powder for you, I think. I personally prefer this powder over the Givenchy powder, and it just looks perfect, doesn't it? I think it looks so perfect. This is how it looks. Now I'm going to set my concealer with this powder. As I said, you do not need to set this concealer, but I'm going to do that so you can see how it looks. To set my concealer, I'm going to use this Hourglass brush, and I'm going to use just a little bit, because you don't need to set this concealer, just to brighten it up a little bit. But this one really sets the concealer. I think it's so pretty. Now this is how the powder looks, and I think it's beautiful. It's so pretty. It gives you such a perfect skin look. It's so blurring, it's so beautiful, and it feels so light on the skin. You do not feel this powder. It's maybe, I think, one of the lightest powders you can wear. And the scent is so beautiful. Now, before I'm going to use the highlighter, I want to put a little bit of bronzer on. I'm going to use, I just have the small one, the Hourglass bronzer in Radiant Bronze. I like this bronzer a lot, but I have so many bronzers. I'm not going to buy a big one of this one, because I have this bronzer in some of the Hourglass palettes. And I want to show you how beautiful this bronzer looks over the powder. Now my skin is completely matte, I can tell you this. The Chanel foundation, the Beige foundation, is more of a very hydrating foundation, and my skin looks matte. Especially, I actually like more of a soft matte finish in fall. I like glowy makeup in summer and more of a soft matte makeup in fall. But I have to see if this is maybe too matte for me. But it's so beautiful. I love the way that my skin looks so poreless with this powder. It's so pretty. So this is the bronzer. Now I think I'm going to use the highlight before I'm using blush, because I want to show you how the highlight looks. And I got the shade 3 Warm, Golden Warm, as I said. And this is how it looks. Now I didn't test the highlighter, as you see. Now let me... Oh, this feels interesting. This is how it looks. It feels very creamy and a little bit wet maybe. But on my hand, it gets dry like a powder. But it feels, when I touch it, it feels very, very wet and maybe a little bit cooling. It's a very interesting formula this highlighter has. So I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use this brush again, because this is a brush I use usually for highlighters. Now this one looks quite beaming. Let me see. Oi, this is a very... Oi! I didn't expect it to be this beaming actually. Now let me blend this. Now let me tell you, the highlighter is beautiful. The highlighter is very, very pretty. Now it's quite a strong highlighter, and you shouldn't use as much as I did, so I think it's my fault. I should have used less product, but it's a pretty highlighter. Now I'm not in love with the way it looks on my skin, but I think it's not because of the highlighter. I think it's because of my base. I just do not like the way my skin looks with this primer. And I think the powder is very beautiful. I think the primer is what makes my skin look so weird and so patchy, because I'm not into this primer at all, and I think it ruined my whole complexion today. So, but the primer, the highlighter is pretty. Let me use a little bit less on the other side. Now this time I'm going to put a little bit on my hand and then on my cheeks. Yeah, and you get much less product. It's very pretty. Now you see how pretty this is. It's very pretty. I just used too much on this side. I'm very beaming, but that's okay. Now this is how the highlighter looks. This is a very beaming side. This is a more soft side. I like this highlighter. I think it's very beautiful. It reminds me a little bit of the Dior highlighter. Let me see if they are similar. I have the shade, this one, and I have the shade Nude Glow. Let me swatch them next to each other. Now these are the two highlighters. This is a Dior highlighter and this is a Gucci highlighter. And they are quite similar, but I think the Gucci highlighter melts more into the skin. The Dior highlighter, which is very beautiful as well, and it looks really, really pretty on the skin, it doesn't melt into the skin as much as the Gucci highlighter. I have to test the Gucci highlighter more, of course, but when I see it on my hand, on my arms, I think I prefer the Gucci highlighter. The finish of it, it's so beautiful, and I like the texture. It's quite interesting. It feels very cooling and wet and beautiful and very thin, very pretty. So this is the highlighter. I really like the highlighter. Now I'm going to use a little bit of blush because I need some blush, and I'm going to use the Gucci blush in what is it? In Rosy Beige, because I want to see how this highlighter works with blush as well. I'm going to use the Charlotte Tilbury brush again. Let me see. Very pretty of a color. Now the Gucci blushes do have a glow by their own. They are not shimmery, but they have a glow. And I think my skin is so dry at the moment. They do not blend into each other very well. But what's interesting, I see this now, is that my skin is dry, but the blush still melts more into my skin than the highlighter. So the texture of the blush is much more friendly to dry skin than the highlighter is. Because the Gucci blushes, they are so beautiful in texture. So it seems like that the blush has a better, I think for me, a better quality, because it melts into my skin, even so my my complexion isn't perfect. It is a little bit too dry at the moment. The blush still looks beautiful. So I think I prefer the Gucci blush more than the Gucci highlighter. Tell me if you have both, what do you think? Now the other side. Yeah, it's the same. So even if you use less of the highlighter, the blush just melts more into the skin. So this is how it looks. Now my skin felt and looked so dry, I had to use a setting spray, and I used this one from Givenchy. This one is very hydrating, and I love this. And I think my complexion looks much better now, and I'm more pleased with it. So this is okay for me now, because before I felt very bad with my complexion. Now, what are my thoughts about the products? The primer, I don't like. I don't think it's a bad primer, but I think it's not for me. I think this one is more for girls with more of a combination oily skin. You are going to like this primer, but you have to be careful what product you are using with it, because this primer is very picky when it comes to combining this primer with some other products. So I wouldn't buy this primer again, and I think for the price it's not worth it. Even if you like more of a mattifying primer, this one is not worth it. You get much better primers that do the same job for less amount of money. So I wouldn't recommend this primer. I'm so sorry. I hope if you like this primer, you got it and you like it, then please tell me in the comments. Maybe it's just my complexion, but I don't like it. Now to the powder. I love this powder. I think it smells so beautiful and it is so blurring on the skin. It gives you such a perfect skin. So especially if you have more of a combination oily skin, because this powder is a little bit mattifying, you are going to love this one. Now it's maybe not the perfect powder for my complexion, but there are days I want to look more blurred, more matte maybe, then I'm going to use this because I think it's beautiful. It's one of the best mattifying powders I have ever tried. It's just beautiful, and I think it's much better than the Givenchy powder, this one, because this one is thinner and even more blurring than the Givenchy powder. So if you are thinking about getting this powder, you have a go from me, because I think it's beautiful. I would recommend this powder, and I think it's worth the price because you get so much product. So you get much more product than the Sicily powder, and I think the Sicily powder is more expensive, but the Sicily powder is better for you girls with more dry skin like myself. So if you have more of a combination oily skin, this is a powder for you. It's beautiful. Now the concealer, I think this is one of the best concealers, especially if you have more aged under eyes. This is beautiful because it gives you a lot of coverage right away. You don't need to build it up a lot, and it sets by itself, so you don't have to use an extra powder to set it, and it's so beautiful. Now I'm not very happy with the shade because I think it's too yellow. I have to buy the shade in peach as well and to mix them, but I think it's beautiful. And but if you have the House Labs concealer, I don't think you have to have this one. This one is just better if you are more mature, because I think the coverage is quite similar, and I love the House Labs concealer as well, but I think I prefer the Westman Atelier concealer a little bit more because this one is thinner and it spreads more easily. So the concealer is a total win for me. It's beautiful. When it comes to the Gucci highlighter, I think this is a beautiful product actually. I think it's very pretty. You have to be careful because it's a very, very strong highlighter. So don't use too much because then you get quite a beaming look on your skin. So be careful with that. But otherwise, it's a beautiful highlighter. I love the texture of it. It feels very interesting. But I was surprised because I think the texture of the blush is much better than the one of the highlighter. The blush is much more blurring and much more friendly to the skin, especially if your skin is a little bit dry. So I would prefer Gucci coming out with a highlighter with this texture, because this one looks much prettier on the skin than this highlighter. But still, the highlighter is pretty, but the blush is better. The battery just died, I'm sorry. Now, if you like the video, then please give me a thumbs up. Tell me in the comments if you have any of these products and what do you think about them, or do you planning to get one of them? And if you'd like to see more from me, then please consider subscribing, and I hope I'm going to see you in my next video. Bye!